This summer, just to remind you, we are looking at some places in Israel and thereabouts where you can visit. And one of the things that if you get a chance to go and you go and visit, if you go to some of these sites, you'll notice they look kind of ordinary in many ways. And that's the point. Because it's in these ordinary places that God did some extraordinary things. Not because the place was extraordinary, but because God is. And his power and his glory were demonstrated. A couple weeks ago, we looked and we saw that at the Red Sea. Last week, we looked and saw that at the Jordan River. This morning, we're going to look at a place called Jericho. Now, Jericho is an interesting spot. It's actually one of the oldest cities in the world. And the longest kind of oldest fortified city, continuous people there, it's probably like 10,000 years old. I mean, it is ancient. But now if you were to go there, you will notice that there is there's a modern city there, and stuff. But then there's this tell, it's called Tel Es Sultan. And it is a place, it's a couple of football fields and length of the whole size of it. Now, a tell is just a word, it comes from the idea of a mound. And what happens is some people put together a city, a town, a village, whatever, their little community, and they build it. And in those places where they use mud bricks, well, things might fall down, weather might get to them, an army might attack them, and it kind of falls down. And sometime later, people come in and say, well, let's build on what was already here, because this is a good spot. So let's build on here. So then they build up, and then something else happens, and it falls down, and they build up on that. And then they just keep building and building. And so eventually, what you get is this mound or this hill. And archaeologists go, well, that doesn't look like it fits here. And so they'll go, and they'll begin to kind of dig around a little bit and see if there's something there. If there is, they keep on digging. And Jericho is one of those places. And so there is this archaeological site that you can visit today. Now, let me just show you a few kind of pictures of that. First off, what we have here, let's just find it on the map. So you can see Jericho kind of in that, kind of in the middle, surrounded in red. That's where Jericho is at. The blue arrow is just showing you the Jordan River, so you can kind of see how things are located. And then if you were to go there, well, here's just a picture of the excavation site that there is. You can kind of see the modern parts of Jericho there in the background. If you go in and look around a little bit more, you can kind of see this is what's known as the Tower of Jericho. It's a structure that's within that. And then if you're wondering you've heard about the walls of Jericho, here's some of the walls, one of the walls of Jericho right there. And you must say, well, it's still standing. Well, part of it is. So that's kind of what you have. Now, for the Israelites, as they're coming into what we call the conquest period, they're going to come in. This is the first city that they've got to deal with. And when you come to a walled city like this, you have a few options. Usually what you do is, historically, they would lay siege to it. And then, so that is, the invading force comes up, kind of sets up shop. The city, they lock themselves inside. And as long as each side is on the right side of their walls, everybody's safe. What do you do then? Well, if you know your history or you watch a lot of movies, you got a few options. One is you wait them out. Whoever has the most food tends to win on that one. And so you go as long as you can, and if the people on the inside begin to realize we'll never be able to outlast them, let's see if we can come up with some nice surrender terms. If the people on the outside get to a point where well, they're never coming out, we're running out of food, we got to leave, we'll come back and we'll try another day. Another way is to see there's some way you can get over the walls. And maybe with ladders or something like that, some way to maybe kind of break down a gate or something and do it that way. Or a third way, you build a big wooden horse, put some of your soldiers on the inside, and hope that they take it on the inside. So that's another way. God had another idea. He's got a different plan. And this plan isn't really just about Jericho. It is about the whole conquest, the whole moving in to this promised land. So let's take a look at it. But one of the things you'll notice as we go through this is a weird plan. The things that he has them do, they're just kind of baffling. So we might call this God's baffling battle plan for entering the promised land. This baffling battle plan. Let's take a look at it. We begin with this. We're in Joshua chapter 5. If you want to open up your own Bibles and look in there, you can. We're going to work our way through a good portion of it. It says, at that time, the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites. Now, I got to tell you, that's probably about the weirdest military preparation I can think of. Because you're going to have several days where all those guys that got circumcised are not going to be any good to anybody. So what in the world is going on? Well, we're reminded of this. In just a couple verses later, it says, all the people that came out of Egypt had been circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness during the journey from Egypt had not. Now, the circumcision was a covenantal sign that said it marked you. It was your identity that said you were a part of God's covenantal people. You're a part of this. And so the first generation that came out, they had all been circumcised. They had all been identified in the covenant. But as they traveled around for 40 years, and they weren't lost, that wasn't the problem. The problem, remember, was that first generation, when they got to the borders of this promised land, they decided they couldn't do it. So God said, okay, we'll just wait until we have a generation that will trust me. So it was a sign. So what God does, and what we're seeing, this battle plan provides several things. And the first one is he provided a symbol of their identity. He provided a symbol of their identity. He reminded them who they were and whose they were. He reminded them that they belonged to him, that they had an identity within him. Think about this. You're getting ready for the big game. Team is in the locker room. Coach is there. What does the coach do? The coach doesn't sit there and say, okay, now let me just remind you, number 42, I'm going to need you to make a sweep around this. Hey, number 45, I'm going to need you to do this. Let's go through all the plays one more time, and I'm going to do it. Is that what he does? No. Reminds him, let me tell you, you guys are winners. You guys have put in the hard work. You guys are a part of a team. You guys belong to one another. You go out there and have each other's back. He reminds them who they are and what they belong to. And so what this does is it gives them a reminder who they are. That's so important. Then we read, on the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camping at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. Again, seems kind of weird to me that preparing for battle was not, normally you think about an army getting all ready to go. They're fist bumping and chest thumping and doing all those things to kind of rile themselves up and get themselves ready. No, they're going to sit down and they're going to have lunch. They're going to take some time. Why? Well, if we go back to Exodus chapter 12, as the Israelites are getting ready to leave, Egypt says, obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he promised, observe this ceremony, the Passover ceremony. And when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, it is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. So God provides a symbol of their identity, but now he provides a remembrance of his power and his grace. Passover was an opportunity to remember their rescue. It also is an opportunity to remember God's grace. That they did not choose the Lord chose them. It was an act of His grace, not their achievement. And so, putting this together, we're going to have a reminder of their identity and a reminder of God's power and grace before they enter into this promised land. Then it says, then the day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the land. There was no longer any manna from the Israelites. But that year, they ate the produce of Canaan. What's manna? That word literally means, what is it? Because what happened is they woke up one day, the early generations coming out of Egypt, they needed some food. They woke up and there was this stuff kind of like dew on the ground. It was a grain type of thing. It was just very odd and very weird. And so they went out there and said, what is it? Well, what they found is that they could make it into bread. And God sustained them through the years. So they find different ways to do it. And if they had any bananas, they would make some banana manna. Yeah, that was bad. That wasn't. I'm a grandpa. I'm 2 generations of dad jokes, man. So what's he doing here? Now the manna's going to stop. So they have it miraculously, and now they don't. So God provided differently to create forward momentum. They can't sit there any longer and say, well, Jericho's in the way. We'll just hang out here and eat banana manna every day. We'll have manna muffins. I got 1 million of them. All right? We'll just sit here and we'll wait. No, now they have to go in. And so things change. For the last 3 years, I've been watching my youngest grandson, and his name is Gus. And when we started, I started watching when he was an infant. I watch him one day a week, and on Fridays. And here's the thing: apparently, you have to feed them. You can't just let them sit there all day and fast. You got to feed them. So the feeding has changed over time. First, it was the bottle. It was some formula, and then maybe some milk. And then we started, some baby food, and I'd have to feed that to him. And then a little bit more grown-up food, and then, still kind of feeding him. Then we got to the point, I'd do it. So okay, go at it, buddy, and go along. Even my older grandkids, 3 of them who live with us, they're old enough to kind of start making some things themselves. They get the milk and the cereal together. They can put a waffle in this. They can microwave something. But who provided it? Yeah. The means changed, but the provider didn't. And that is something I want you to take away from this morning, that the means may change of how God provides, but the provider doesn't. He stays the same. The manna ended. They would have to cultivate, but the means, though it changed, the provider did not. Now, we go a little further in the story. It says, when Joshua was near Jericho, so he moves up closer to Jericho and goes up there to kind of check things out. You can kind of see him. He's a general now. He's a leader. He's got to see how things are. And he's probably thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? And he looked up and he saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went up to him and asked, are you for us or for our enemies? Basically, whose side are you on? Neither, he replied. But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does my Lord have for his servant? And the commander, before he gives him this message, says this, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. I've had those surgeries, different surgery a few different times, and those of you you've had that same experience. You're laying there, you've been prepped in different ways. They got you all ready. And then the doctor comes in. And then the doctor begins to say, now let me tell you every single thing I'm going to do for you in the next hour or two or whatever it's going to be. I'm going to walk you through all the details, right? No. He comes in, and hopefully, or she comes in and says basically, well, this is my first rodeo, so let's see how this thing goes. No, he comes in and just, I hear this all the time, you probably have too. Well, I've done a lot of these, and and they kind of walk you through, a very, very high level. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to wheel you back. We'll get in there. We'll take a look at it. We'll clean this out. We'll put this back together, whatever it is they're going to do. Now, why do they come in there? Not to give you instructions, but to reassure you. First thing is, hey, just so you know, the surgeon is here. But just say, I'm here. And I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to get you through this. And so here now is God's presence. We tend to believe that this commander is some manifestation of the Lord. And he's there. Now there is a Moses callback here in a moment. If you know the story of Moses, and Moses sees that burning bush in the wilderness, and he goes, and the first thing he's told, take off your sandals, you're on holy ground. That's an indication. This is God, and God is present right now. And the visit, the purpose of the visit is a reminder of who the battle belonged to. Who is ultimately going to do the fighting? Who is going to have the victory? The battle was the Lord. It belonged to him. The battle was the Lord's. It's his. And you and I, we need to figure that out and remember that to this day. As we're facing spiritual battles in our life, who does the battle belong to? The Lord's. So often we keep trying to bring up all of our wisdom and insight and strength and everything to take something on, and then finally we realize, I can't do it anymore. And we just surrender, say, okay, Lord, it's yours. You do what I cannot do. I'm going to rest in you. I'm going to trust in you. I'm going to stop fighting and let you work. Centuries later, a young David would declare this truth to a superior Philistine army. He said, those who gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Years later, he would include this reality in a song where he says, some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. The story of ancient Israel is a repeated story of oftentimes going up against superior forces and them having to learn that they don't have to have a greater strength, physical strength than the enemy. They just need to trust in their Lord. Man, if when you and I figure that out, when we get a hold of that, powerful things can begin to happen in our lives. And Jericho now is a classroom for all this, a lesson place for them to learn. So then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands. Now notice that. See, I've already done it. It's a foregone conclusion that they're going to be delivered over to you, along with its king and its fighting men. Now here's what you're going to do. March around the city once with all the armed men. Makes sense. And do this for 6 days. Really? Once a day for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times. Well, that'll do it. Or will it? With the priests blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. Here's the thing, God provided a victory to be received, not achieved. I have not read military textbooks of how to take this on, but I have never heard that any of them include this battle plan. Because it's a weird one, isn't it? Just walk around the building, blowing trumpets, shouting. Surely there were some in there that were saying, come on, let's attack this place. Come on, let's go get them. Let's start throwing spears. Let's throw rocks. Let's do something. Not just walk around, but that's what we said, just walk around. And now they're learning to trust in him. That God does things differently than the world does. God's victories come through trusting obedience, not through human strength or ingenuity. We do not fight with the weapons that the world does. We fight on our knees. We fight in prayer. We fight with humility and obedience. And so Joshua, in this conquest of Jericho, taught the Israelites to depend on the Lord for entering Canaan. That if they're going to truly do it, they have to depend. And unfortunately, what we see, they don't always depend on him. They don't always trust in him. They get kind of a little scared and they stop. And that comes back to haunt them. Now, God doesn't fight our battles by bringing down physical walls. But he still provides ways for us to survive and thrive in this world while we dwell in his kingdom. And so Jesus taught us how to enter God's kingdom, how to live there and inhabit it. Because the means have changed, but the provider has not. And so now we're going to get a different way. And he does this through a prayer. You can see this in a certain prayer that he gives us that many of us know, but we just kind of say it rotely if we say it at all, but not realizing that each part has something for us to hang on to. Because what we need to see is that God changes us before he'll change our circumstances so many times. He starts within here before he starts with out here. And so one way to see that is through this prayer, the Lord's Prayer. Now, there's not a one-to-one connection between all the parts of the Jericho battle plan and the Canaanite battle plan here, or land of Canaan. But there are some things that we can see that are similar. It gives us a lens through which to look. So let's read the prayer together. Let's just together, you don't have to stand, but let's just read it aloud together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Now, if you're not sure, say, what are these debts? Because I would like my debts forgiven. It's just another word for sin. The penalty, what we owe God because of our sin. So let's break this down. Now, it's interesting. There's this thing called, this ancient manual called the Didache that goes back to late 1st century, early 2nd century. It was kind of a manual for churches and for Christians to help them. And one of the things it said, read this 3 times a day. They kind of borrowed the Jewish practice of saying certain prayer 3 times a day. And so they said, let's do that, but let's do it with this Lord's Prayer. And I think there is something to revisiting this if we break it apart a little bit and see what it's saying to us. So let's look at that. First part, we see our Father in heaven. What's that do for us? It reminds us of our identity in Him. I don't know about you, but I have found so many different ways to try to build an identity for myself over the decades. You know, I remember when I got my Letterman's jacket, my senior year of high school. Well, now I'm a jock. I'm in that elite group. Only to go off to college and find out nobody wore their Letterman's jackets there. Okay? No, I'll be the funny guy. That'll be me. I'll tell a lot of jokes. You see how that's working for me, right? Different ways, you know, that we try to come up. You think about your way. How do I try to find my identity? And here's the one that will not change. And that is your identity as a child of God. Our Father is saying He's your Father. And if He's your Father, then you're His child. And that cannot be taken away from you. You belong to Him. That means you are precious in His sight. Hang on to that. Recognize that. Israel was reminded of its covenantal identity. We begin by remembering who we belong to. And when you hear voices that say, oh, you're never going to measure up, or you're no good, or whatever, you say, no, my Father is God in heaven. My Father is King of kings. Say that He is in heaven. Why that in heaven part there? Because of the way they understood heaven, they realized God is over it all. It's not that just, well, yeah, my God's in heaven, you know. My dad's in heaven somewhere. No, He's saying He's over all of it. He's sovereign over it all. Hallowed be your name is the next part. That reminds us of who He is. So we are reminded of who we are, who we belong to. Who is it we belong to? Someone holy, unique, different from every other thing. There is no one like our God. There is nothing in this world like our God. Our God stands above it all because He created it all. Joshua removed his sandals because he stood on holy ground. Here's the thing, folks. If the Spirit is within you, you are always on holy ground. You are always in His presence. There is nowhere you can go where He is not. And so to say that He is holy, hallowed, it reminds us of who He is. It also, because He is holy, it reminds us that we need to make sure we are aligning our lives with Him and not the other way around. And so Jesus gives that. He says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That reminds us to submit to His will. I love the 4th of July. I really do. I love our nation. I stand for the allegiance. I stand for the anthem. I'm one of those neighbors that'll drive you crazy shooting off fireworks at night, though I try to do it in a reasonable time frame. And I've gone from over the years, to the fountain things to now shooting the stuff up in the sky. I love living in America. I do. I love that I get to add my voice to our political system. And so do you. But I also know that my greater allegiance is not to a flag, but to the King of Kings. My ultimate allegiance is not to any political party. It's to the Prince of Peace. And if there's a conflict between God's will and public policy, You know what I get to do? I get to voice and say, hey, we need to make a change here. That's the great thing about this nation. We get to speak into it. We don't have to have a love it or leave it mentality. Our founding fathers gave us a self-correcting method. So if we get something wrong, we recognize it, we get to bring it back around. We have to watch out about overcorrecting, which we often do, but we get to correct it. And sometimes public policy that aligns with God's will, for some folks, it's going to look a little liberal. For other folks, it's going to look kind of conservative. But we should always be seeking to do His will. And not just nationally, every day in my life, I need to say, God, what is your will for me? What is your general will? Help me understand that first, and then within that, define that specific will for the day. But to seek Him out. Remembering this, we often, in political parties, like to say, well, God's on our side, God's not on our, or there is no God, or whatever it might be. What did that commander say? Whose side are you on? I'm on no one's side. I'm on neither. For the Christian, it's not about getting God on your side, it's about you getting on God's side. Christian life is about submitting our will to God, not manipulating Him or trying to do ours. Then he goes on to say, give us today our daily bread. And it reminds us to depend on Him. Daily bread was a callback to the manna, which gave way to cultivation and harvest. They moved from miraculous provision to ordinary means. And that's going to look even different now in an industrial age. But here's the thing. Tomorrow, there may be coffee and then work and then bills and then laundry, whatever else there's going on. None of that feels miraculous, does it? But every bit of it depends on God. And I still need today's bread. I still need His daily provision. Because the means may have changed, but the provider doesn't. And then we have this. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And that reminds us of the cross. You and I, we cannot defeat evil ourselves. Jericho's battle looked foolish. But you know what else looked foolish to the world? The cross. In fact, the Bible says so. To the perishing, the cross is foolishness. But yet it provides for us the means of our salvation, the means of our hope. For Jesus, it was not some glorious death in battle. It was an absolute surrender, taking our place. The world saw death on a cross as humiliation, but Jesus turned that around. It says this, having disarmed the powers and authorities, He made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. Folks, here's the thing you need to take right now. You cannot save yourself or even overcome temptation by yourself any more than you can do open heart surgery on yourself. You must seek the Lord and put your trust and your hope in Him and Him alone to fight any spiritual battle. The means may have changed between Israel and us, but the provider has not. Hang on to that. And let me encourage you, invite you, implore you to run to the provider. In a moment, we're going to take a little piece of bread and a little cup of juice. And those are small little symbols, but they represent something so huge. Jesus' death on the cross. The means of our salvation every single day. Not just a one-time salvation, but every single day we have a God who is with us. Let's pray. Father, I thank you right now for the hope that is found in Jesus and Jesus alone. And while we thank you for this nation in which we live. Help us to thank you even more for the Savior who invites us into your kingdom and has made that possible through his death, his burial, and his resurrection. As we remember and proclaim that through these elements, speak to us this morning, each of us something we need to hear. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.